Oh, my little Roy toy. What is it about good sex that makes me have to crap? Guess it's all that pump and dump. You really jarred something loose, Tiger.
Best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
I need the best.
I had the best words.
Well, I'm the best there is.
The best. We the best.
Have a chance to be the best of the best.
You are now listening to Best of the Best, presented by Radar Studios. Starring two guys who use their middle initial to sound cool. Here are your hosts, Neal E. Fisher and Mark P. Smith.
What was the story you were telling me about? Some woman that lived next to you in Florida that reminded you of the character in There's Something About Mary?
Yeah, our neighbor that we live next to, she was, when I saw There's Something About Mary and saw Lin Shaye's portrayal of Magda, it totally reminded me of my next door neighbor. And my mom hadn't seen the film, and I showed her, and she was like, "Oh my God, I can't even remember her name right now. That's Mrs. Douglas. Her last name was Douglas." But she was, definitely like a widow lady that lived in Florida for a long time. So she was super tan, super baked, and I just thought it was funny that she had captured that pretty well, considering that she's from Detroit and lived in Los Angeles, and she really got that kind of older, like Florida widow.
Yeah, she hit the nail on the head.
Then, so. Great interview.
Yeah, so we just, you're about to hear, I guess we just finished, but you're about to hear an interview we did with actress Lin Shaye. She's just an accomplished actress who, has a theater background. She's from Detroit. She has great stories where she studied with Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler and Uta Hagen. And you know her best, I'm sure, from, Kingpin and Dumb and Dumber. There's Something About Mary, Insidious. She plays Elise, the medium. She's just someone who's been in the business for a long time, has so much experience and love for what she does and passion. And it was really cool that we got to talk to her today. Yeah,
I was looking forward to this. I love, starting with Nightmare on Elm Street. I know her character is smaller, but, she's memorable in everything she does. And of course, obviously the Farrelly Brothers movies, the new Insidious, all the cult classic horror films she's been in. I mean, so many films. So it was super exciting to get to talk to her. So I think you guys will appreciate her stories and her wisdom.
Yeah, and I hope you guys like the interview, and we'll see you at the end. Hello.
Neal?
Hey, Lynn, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for calling in. Mark and I were really excited to know that you'd be able to talk a bit. And what we've been doing is, we interview filmmakers or actors or editors that we really admire and the work that they'd done, and just kind of find out where their beginnings were and how they got into the business, because we have a lot of people that we know listen that are young DPs or people who are trying out acting or want to be actors full time. And you're one of the best examples that I know of someone who has really kind of done any type of movie that they've wanted, and you're so great in everything. And I know that your background, being from the Midwest like us, so we just wanted to start there. Like, what was it like, growing up in the Midwest and kind of getting into acting?
Well, let's see. I'm from Detroit, and we lived, it wasn't suburbs yet. It was sort of, there were residential areas. I don't know if anybody knows Detroit, but it was between 6 and 7 Mile Road and off Livernois, sort of, I think we were east of Livernois, if I remember. And, nothing was really, I always enjoyed storytelling, I guess. I mean, even when I was little, I used to spend a lot of time by myself talking to myself and making up stories. There were not a lot of kids in my neighborhood when I was young, and so I spent a lot of time alone, to play. I mean, there was nobody really to play with, so it was either roller skating outside or talking to myself in my room with my dolls and my stuffed animals, and I would literally make up, like serial stories, that would carry over into the next day. And it's interesting, my parents never really promoted anything one way or the other. They were very, just very there, in terms of whatever I was doing. If I wasn't in trouble, it was a good thing. And I was a very, very shy kid, actually. I didn't demand very much attention. I really was able to entertain myself. So I think it sort of started there. And then as I got into grade school and high school, I was interested in the idea, again, of telling a story and pretending I was somebody else. And so that's obviously leads into into theater. So whatever plays were happening in grade school or and especially more in high school, I would always, try out, and I never got the big parts. I always got the little parts, but I didn't care because I just loved doing it. And after high school, I went to University of Michigan, and I was an art history major. It never occurred to me to be an actress. I mean, I never had any aspiration to be an actress, to be honest. It wasn't about that. It was about pretending to be somebody else and realizing I was pretty good at that. I could change my voice. I just had that. I was a good, not really mimic, but I could sort of step into another persona. Even as a kid, I felt like that was something I was good at doing. And so you get feedback and people tell you, oh, that was really funny. Oh, you're really good. And, that as a child, that promotes you to want to do it more, of course, as well. So at Michigan, I was not a theater major or anything like that. I was, again, always interested in what theater was going on, and there was something called Soft Show, which was the sophomore show, Bye Bye Birdie, and wow. I played Ursula Merkel, and I was not a singer, so they'd always put me in the parts where you didn't have to sing or it didn't matter if you were off key. So I did, and on the town I remember there was a wonderful actor named Fred Coffin who has passed away. He played Rec, and I played Helen, if anybody knows the show. And I remember playing her really with a little voice just like this, everything was very exciting, and it just sort of came naturally, again, to pretend I was someone else. And when I graduated in Michigan, then I was in Europe for a year, which is a very long story. It's much longer than this phone call could handle. But just to answer your question to start with, I think it was not so much about where I was from as much as having a comfortable, lenient childhood where my parents were supportive of me exploring things that were interesting to me. My mother was very protective. I mean, it was a real, it was definitely not a progressive, household. My father went to work every day and came home at 6 o'clock, and we had dinner. And but I was sort of left to do what was fun for me, and that was great. They didn't push me into anything. We tried piano lessons. I didn't really. I wasn't very good at that. We tried this, we tried that, but it was pretty much the best thing I can say about that is there was a lot of support to enjoy childhood, and so whatever my parents felt was a part of that, they supported that. So that was great. They allowed me to flower.
Well, I think that's really important because that's very similar to me. My parents, allowed me to do basically anything I wanted to try. I did baseball and sports, and then once I got to high school, right. I played drums and did theater then because my background starts in theater. And it's funny you mentioned Bye Bye Birdie. I actually played drums for that show a few times, and I just loved being in theater because the thing I think about the theater community that's so great is no matter where you're from or how new you are or green or how much experience you have, everyone is so welcoming in that community. And I think for anyone in the arts, really, that's a great stepping off point, whether you want to be a filmmaker or just an actor, to be involved with that.
Well, the community of creativity is obviously a really important one. I didn't really feel I experienced that until I was in New York. Actually, I ended up going to New York. I got a job at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the registrar's office. That was my first job, and it was boring, because it was very clerical, and I kept wondering when I was going to get to do a play again. It really was at that point I realized there's a profession called acting, being an actress, where I could actually, be in try and do theater as much as I wanted. So I ended up going to applying to graduate school, and I went to Columbia in their theater arts program. I was there for 3 years in New York, and that was really the launching point to doing theater. And I had no aspiration for film at all. I mean, it didn't even occur to me. I mean, it was nonstop theater. It was right when off Broadway were just getting started. This was in the early 70s, and it was really a heyday. There was a real community of writers, directors, and actors. We were always workshopping scripts. Playwrights Horizons, the WPA, Manhattan Theater Club, American Place Theater, the Chelsea Theater Center, Lincoln Center. These were all places I worked at, and so I have a very rich and gratefully a wonderful theater background. And one thing I finally have realized is I think that's why I really enjoy filmmaking as opposed to, if it's not theater, as opposed to television as we have known it. It's changed now. Mm-hmm. But I really like kind of lounging around in a character and seeing the rehearsal process is so much fun for me. And and television is more of a shorthand, and I'm not as good at that, to be honest. I mean, it makes me have a lot of anxiety when I'm giving new pages every 30 seconds, and people are, we got to get going. And we got, it's like I catch that disease, and it's not really what I enjoy the most. What I enjoy the most is the rehearsal process, or having a script and being able to go through it and then go back and discuss dialogue with the director and, really be a participant in the process, which theater very much is, or was at least when I was doing it. So it was a great beginning to really grow as an actor and as a character actor, meaning not so much she's not pretty enough to be the lead, blah, blah, blah. It's more about, to me, it's always a character. I mean, you're always stepping into someone else's life. And I love that.
Hey, Lynn, it's Mark. Sorry we didn't get a chance to properly I've been listening the whole time. I just want to make sure you if you heard me laugh or whatever comment, I just want to make sure you weren't. It wasn't
my very
scary
low voice.
I didn't hear anything. Nothing at all except support. So that's good.
I know you're. I had one question. I was thinking about you were talking about your background, your childhood. I know your brother's in the business. Did you guys ever collaborate when you were younger, or was that something that happened later on?
Well, Bob is like 4.5 years older than I was. He actually was a fantastic photographer as a young. My parents. This is also something kind of unusual. My parents built him a little dark room in our basement when he was like 11 years old or 12. Wow. Very interested in photography and won some prizes with some photographs he did. And he was, of course, in high school, he was the portrait photographer for all the girls. Okay. So they would all end up in our basement somewhere, with my brother taking their photos. But all kidding aside, Bob had a very good eye, and he kind of, there was no real collaboration of any kind. I mean, he did his thing, I did my thing, and he came to, actually, I moved to New York before he did, and because I was there in school, and he started New Line. I was actually sharing an apartment with him and his girlfriend when he started New Line Cinema, and it really started out more as as a business of distribution. It wasn't a production company yet. And my brother's a seriously brilliant guy. I mean, he's a Fulbright scholar, and he graduated Columbia Law School. He's not just smart in terms of making movies and having great taste, but he's really a fascinating man. And, I'm proud that he's my brother, obviously. And when he started New Line, literally it was a desk in his living room with another guy at the other sitting across from him, and they started this company of. He bought 3 films. One was a Czechoslovakian film called Jan Nemec was the director. I remember that because he was a very fine. I think he's still living director, and a documentary by the Farrelly Brothers. who were quite popular, were documentarians of the time, called Valley, the Witch of Positano. And then a third film was the guys from Second City, all the comics, Anthony Holland, Severin Darden. These are probably people whose names you might not know, but who were really the beginning of sort of improv comedy at that time. And he distributed them. His idea was to get a niche marketplace to distribute them to college campuses.
Oh, wow.
So to the art theaters on each campus. So that was his target selling point, to get the films out there. And then very slowly it started to grow. Then he had 2 employees. He had Vivian, the microbiotic secretary, and then it sort of just started to blossom. And it wasn't until and he was always very supportive of me. I mean, actually, Bob and his girlfriend sort of took care of me at a certain point when I was living with them and I was in school at Columbia, and were really a very important part of my growth, I would say, as an actress and as a person. And finally I got a place of my own, and Bob moved into as well as his apartment, he moved New Line into a small office. And I think the first movie they produced was Stunts, which was actually really good. It was with Robert Forrester, and I can't remember the other actors, but that was the first movie they produced. And then slowly they were doing lecture series with R.D. Lang, and Werner Herzog became a part of his community, and some really wonderfully educated and interesting people who were also filmmakers. And slowly, they were always struggling, and it wasn't until Nightmare on Elm Street that they really had any success, and that's a whole story unto itself. And unbeknownst, and Bob always gave me little opportunities. I mean, he was very funny about it, because he would always pretend, like, oh, get your own, do your own thing. He was a mean big brother, but not really mean. It's just that's the way he kind of would. But he was always generous in terms of offering up. He would tell other directors, put my sister in your movie, or make sure there's a part for Linda, because my real name is Linda. So,
interesting.
So he really helped me tremendously, and I like to think I spun straw into gold. I mean, it's funny, even the first Nightmare on Elm Street, it's amazing to me how many people remember my role in that movie. It was just a little 2-day thing. I don't even know if it was 2 days. It might have been 1 day. And literally, Bob said to Wes Craven, find a part for my sister. I mean, that was, I don't make any secret about that. I didn't audition for Wes. I just remember getting the part. And for me, that was like, oh, my God. And so my career in movies really, didn't start till I came to California. And I never treated it any different than anything else I did as an actress. I mean, I always worked exactly the same way. I didn't realize how much more there was to learn until now, really. I mean, I learn every movie I'm in. I watch other actors work. I watch the setups. I mean, it's really, people underestimate how difficult getting a movie done and finished is.
That's very true, yeah.
Oh my God! It's just a series of nightmare problems every day, But it's kind of a fun nightmare,
Yeah.
It's like because it's exciting, you're building this piece of art. It is, even if it's a crappy movie, it's still you're building. If you have some integrity about what you're trying to do, whether it comes out well or not. Nobody puts themselves through all that unless they really want something special to happen.
Right.
You sure don't do it for money most of the time,
Right.
for the love of what you're creating. So,
of course.
I'm still in that space. I mean, I love acting. I just love it. I love I'm working on this film, going to be doing this film now, and it's such a great character. And I'm actually working on the story a bit and the dialogue also, because, I've learned a lot over the years, of what about storytelling. It all goes back to storytelling for me.
Well, I think just like you said, every movie you're basically picking a group of specialists in their own fields, and you guys all go to war, and it's basically Murphy's Law every day because something's going to go wrong, and you got to fix it. But then that's the fun part of it. And I guess for actors listening too, as far as your education and while you were in New York, you studied with like Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler and all of them, right?
Oh, I auditioned 5 times for the Actors Studio, and finally Lee Strasberg let me in. I mean, that was, this was the heyday. I mean, I feel so grateful and lucky. I mean, Shelley Winters and Arthur Penn and Mark Rydell, and oh my God, there was just Marty Landau. I mean, all these people were part of the Actors Studio, and that was a great club to get into. And I would go twice a week, and you would do scene work, and it was wonderful to be in front of Lee Strasberg for whatever. And I worked with Stella Adler, and Uta Hagen was a big influence in my career. I mean, I still do what Uta told me to do. I still do. I mean, she is a very practical teacher about using objects and creating a life around you. And whether you're doing theater or film, for instance, you sit in your living room learning lines or whatever, and getting an idea of how the scene should go and what you want in the scene. But once you're on set, everything can shift. Suddenly you're facing right instead of left. Like I realize I'm a spatial learner, really. I mean, and so if I'm facing the wrong way, I have to sort of start all over again. Because if I was facing it the different way when I learned everything at home, you have to sort of make those really kind of silly physical adjustments for yourself that nobody else needs to know about, really. But at the same time, suddenly you're sitting at a desk and there's a glass of water and a bottle of scotch, somewhere that someone set in the scene, that the set designer put there. And suddenly there's things for you to work with. I mean, acting is not talking.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Acting is acting.
Yeah.
And again, you're more limited on stage. It's broader because obviously the entire show is in front of you at all times. Where in film, you do a master, you do your 2-shot or whatever it is, your close-ups. And so there's a different kind of technique that you need to also be aware of when you do film, which I'm still learning after all these years. But the idea is there's objects around you to use, to build your life, instead of just the way you express yourself. Being emotional is just one of the elements you need, is having your emotions available to you as an actor. But what more so, you need to know how to tell your story and to build that actor. You need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I've sometimes done smaller roles where the character doesn't go anywhere,
right?
And I'm not interested and usually now I feel at this point in my life, after I've been doing it so long, people actually listen to me, which in the beginning I never really said too much. I just tried to fit in whatever I thought was appropriate. But now I know I can say, there's where's the arc? Where do I land? This is just a quick little story too. Kingpin, which is one of my all-time favorite roles.
Ours too, yeah.
In my life. Kingpin was a fantastically structured character. I mean, if you look at those scenes, it was only 2 days' work, but there's a beginning where I introduce myself to Woody Harrelson. Then I fall in love with him. He betrays me, and I have revenge. I mean, there's a beginning, a peak, and an end, and it was wonderful to play because there was a real arc to the character. And sometimes writers aren't aware, especially with peripheral characters, to still give them a beginning, middle, and end. Mm-hmm. Even if you're in one scene, it doesn't matter. It's like, so I always look for that, and if it's not there, I find it, and and I'm usually very vocal about it. Again, and that's the luxury of filmmaking as opposed to TV, where you don't really have that kind of input. It's more. And I'm not dissing television. I think there's especially now, there's some fantastic TV with all the, the AMC and, and Netflix and, the whole gamut, which there's so many now. But I think to always, as an actor, and especially as a young actor, always look for the heart of your character. What's the growth? What's your pinnacle, and where do you go? Like, it's got to have a curve to it. So, and you should always look at that. And if it's not there, you create it. You make it up.
And that's the fun part is the creation.
Yeah.
What a great education. Since you kind of segued into talking about Kingpin, just curious, what was your introduction to the Farrelly Brothers, and how did that come about? Because I think Dumb and Dumber, is that the first thing you worked on with them? Or am I...
Dumb and Dumber.
Okay.
I have one little scene in Dumb and Dumber, and that was thank you to my brother. And it's actually it does have a great story to it, too, because it was a New Line film. It was the first movie the Farrellys did. I got a call. The casting director was a wonderful casting director named Rick Montgomery, who's still very active. So he called me and said, "We're doing this movie, blah blah blah. And there's this role for you. The character's name is Mrs. Nugaborn." and I was ecstatic, and I was going to go to. I think they shot in. I'm not sure where they shot. If it was Providence. Because that's where the Farrellys are from. But anyway, it was a travel. I had to go somewhere. So my travel arrangements, and I was so excited. And I wasn't clear where, so I said to Rick, I was trying to figure out how I got the job, basically. So I figured it had to come from my brother, because it was a New Line picture. Mm-hmm. So I called Bob to thank him, and he got really rude, and he said, "Oh, shut up, get your own job." And he kind of hung up. So I thought, okay, I guess it wasn't Bob. So I was thinking maybe they saw Karina. I had a little tiny segment in that was also a New Line film. Yeah. Maybe the Farrellys had seen some of the other work I'd done at New Line. So we went, and I went and I shot the film. It was just a day's shoot, and it was at first Pete was very polite, and then I brought in a bunch of ideas about the character. It was a woman that was showing her dogs at a dog show, and they were poodles. And I thought I should look like my dog, because all people look like their dog. Yeah. So I thought we should do my hair in the front like a pom-pom, like a bunch of little curls, like in a big sort of clump at the top of the front of my head. And so we did that. So
that was your choice then.
And I also thought at the end it says, when she opens this van door, the dogs are a mess, because Jeff Daniels' character has just taken them to get hamburgers and hot dogs at some fast food place. And they say she screams, and I said, instead of screaming, can I whimper like a dog? So Pete loved that. He thought, that's great.
That's excellent.
So then, like Jeff Daniels got kind of interested too, and I could feel people were seeing I wasn't just Bobby Shaye's sister coming to.
Right.
I was an actress. So that was the end of it. And I went home, and about probably about a month or so later, I get a little letter in the mail. It's from my brother. And he says, for your scrapbook. So I didn't know what that meant. So I open it up. There's a card in there. And the card was from a guy named Charlie Wessler, who was one of the Farrellys' producers, a really nice guy, very interesting guy. And he was producing the film with the Farrellys, Dumb and Dumber. And the card says, "Dear Bob, usually when a producer recommends a family member, we all shriek and run the other way. Thank you for sending us Lynn, because she did such a fantastic job for us."
That was nice.
Yeah.
So it was my brother. That's excellent. And I still have the note. It's still sitting on my desk. And so nepotism is alive and well, and say thank you and go for it. Don't be embarrassed if someone gives you a leg up.
It worked out in everyone's favor, though. It's not, it's not like, you showed up and were
didn't work
cardboard,
hard
or something. It was.
That's what I mean. It's like I've been so grateful because I had opportunities, and I could have, if I wasn't any good, or wasn't. I guess that's the wrong word to use, but if I wasn't. No, if I wasn't any good, nothing would have come from any of it. They would have put Bobby Shaye's sister in the movie, and that would have been the end of it. It would have been a little stupid, day player scene, and that would have been it. But somehow, all those, I never think of it. That's the other thing. Don't ever think, because you only have one line, that it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because it totally matters. totally matters.
Especially on film, because it's going to last forever. It's going to be there.
Yeah. And do your work, even
Right.
if it's a line. Create a life for yourself as an actor, and don't be afraid to bring in the first TV show I ever got. This was crazy too. There's a whole long. There's so much to say after all these years that I've been doing it.
I imagine.
My first TV job in Los Angeles. I'd been out here. I don't know how. I mean, everything feeds into some other long story, but I came out here to meet Jack Nicholson, which is a whole long story, and I flew out pretending I was coming for a visit, and ended up with a line in Going South, this movie that they shot in Mexico, and Betty Buckley put me up at the Chateau Marmont for because when Nicholson was in New York, he had seen a picture of me somewhere and called my agent or their producers. Still don't really know the details of that, but I sent a whole bunch of pictures to him with a little note saying, P.S. I plan to be in Los Angeles for a short visit in the next couple of weeks, which was a total lie. And and he responded and said, I want to meet you as soon as you're in L.A.
Awesome.
So I flew the next morning. I packed dirty laundry and I flew out to Los Angeles. And I had a meeting with Jack, which was the scariest, most incredible moment probably in my life in terms of my career. And in the meantime, I got a job on a TV show, a movie of the week, because of a reel I brought with me from New York. And it was with F. Murray Abraham and Judith Light, and it was called Sex Married Woman. And it was this little scene, and I, thinking like a theater actress, I went shopping. I bought a T-shirt, and I bought earrings, and I brought in a turkey leg because the character was supposed to be in the kitchen, and I figure when I come to the scene, I'm eating a turkey leg. And I brought all these props, and the director was a very well-known director named Jack Arnold, who did a ton of television this was in the 70s. And they were all they were all kind of watching. I was really a fish out of water, and they were going, because I'm sure they never had an actress go shopping for earrings and a T-shirt and bring a turkey leg, to the shoot. And we used all of it. He loved it all, and they were all kind of just, who's this little pisher, And it's all on camera, and it was all there, and it's still, you could go watch it. It's still somewhere on some YouTube thing probably. But it just goes to show, be focused on not being, I've never been focused on being successful. I really haven't, ever, ever. Still, I mean, I just do as best I can with I get obsessed with character, and that's my obsession. Whatever's happened, the wonderful things that are happening to me are unbelievable to me. It makes me emotional. I have no idea how I got here, really and truly.
Well, it sounds like a lot of hard work.
Well, you really worked hard.
I ask Neal that every day.
I guess I did, but it wasn't out of, I'm going to go to Hollywood and I'm going to be in the movie. I never had a vision, ever. And I still don't. My vision is, what do I do in that scene?
Right.
Where do I pick up the glass? Where do I put it down? What's happening for me in this scene? What just happened before? That's all I think about, and I swear to God that's the truth. I'm elated to have the appreciation for my work that I have. That's what I'm elated about.
You were what you were saying there, I was just thinking about going back to when you impressed the Farrelly Brothers with Dumb and Dumber, and obviously we all know Dumb and Dumber and Kingpin and all those movies. To me, are just comedy classics that'll live forever as that. But at the time, or when you were going to do Kingpin, and when they were casting you for Kingpin, that character is so memorable to me and so specific. Is there someone or something that informed you of that person, or how the landlady? I guess that's
here's the other thing. They would not see me for that part. I mean, I tried everything to get an audition.
Huh,
everything. I wrote to Pete. I wrote to this one. I wrote to that one. I'm a big note writer. That's also very important to to reach out to people in an elegant way and let them know
Especially
what
now.
you want.
Yeah.
Because they're not going. Your phone's not going to ring. Trust me.
Right.
That's not how it. I mean, there's a few handful of people that happens to it that didn't even remotely was not my thing. But so I tried everything because I had done Dumb and Dumber. I saw the script because I called Pete's office and said, "I see you're," because I saw in the trades they were making this movie called Kingpin, and so I called Pete's office, and his assistant knew who I was a little bit from Dumb and Dumber, and so I'll send you the script, which probably to this day he probably wasn't supposed to do, but he did. I saw this character. She was described as the angriest, ugliest woman God ever let loose on the planet.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, I've got to play that role. And so I started working on it, and I wrote a note to Pete, and I wrote a note to Charlie West, all these people, and everybody just said, we love your work, but we really don't see you in this part.
Wow.
And there was a wonderful coach and actress named Geraldine Barron, who has since passed away some time ago, actually. And I didn't even know Geraldine that well. I knew her from the Actors Studio. We had mutual friends. And I remember telling her about it. And she just said to me, let's thinking like an actor. What would make her the angriest, ugliest woman on the planet? What would make her so ugly? And I started thinking about a skin condition. She's got hairs growing out of her nostrils.
Right.
So I started working on that character literally in my bedroom at home. And I put eyelashes coming out of my nose, so it looked like I had long black nose hairs. I put egg. My mother used to give herself a facial with egg white, and I remember it would be real scaly, almost looked like a lizard. So I put egg white on my face. I put oil in my hair. I ran my brow together. I thought I went to, there was a vintage clothing store in Melrose called Aardvark's. And I remember walking in because I thought I got to get some kind of outfit. And I still don't have an audition, by the way. I'm just working on this, and still trying to get this audition. And I walked into Aardvark's, and they had a blocks rack of clothing, all this vintage stuff. And I remember just kind of flipping through, and I saw that outfit. Pete used to call it my clown suit, which. And I thought that's the jumpsuit. That's it. So I pulled that out. And long story short, they were starting photography like in about a week, and I still could not get an audition. Wow. And my agent died. I had no agent.
Oh no, my goodness.
And I was sitting at the dining room table at my little house. My husband came in the door, and I was supposed to have a meeting with an agent, and it got canceled. So I was sitting there kind of dressed up with makeup on, and I was just miserable. And so my husband said, what's the matter? And I just said, I can't get an audition, and then my agent's dead, and this thing just got canceled. And so he said, well, why don't you call one of the producers for Kingpin were the same producers from Dumb and Dumber. And there's a wonderful producer. His name is Steve Stabler, who will live in my heart forever and ever and ever. I actually tried to get in touch with him. He's still here and working, I think. I'm not sure what he's doing exactly. And my husband said, why don't you call Steve? Because Steve is this really friendly, sweet guy that I kind of hit it off with the day I was in Providence doing Dumb and Dumber. So I said, no, and I was like, I'm not gonna. And it was really my ex-husband. He said, it's 4:00. Call him. He had lunch. He probably is not grumpy. And and I called, and he actually picked up the phone. And I said, oh my God. I said, I've been trying to get an audition for Kingpin. And he said the same thing. He said, Lynn, we love your work, but we just don't think you're right for the role. And I said, yeah, but I've been preparing. I've got a character that I've prepared, and I've been sitting on my floor in my bedroom for 6 weeks with egg on my face trying to figure out this character. And Steve said, okay, I'll bring you in on Thursday.
Wow, persistence pays off.
I dressed up as Mrs. Dumars, exactly what you see in the movie, with the egg on my face and the nostrils with the hair coming out, and I drove to Santa Monica, 1401 Ocean Park Boulevard or whatever it is, that building everybody goes to. And I came into the lobby, and there was no chairs. They really were like a week away from starting. They were seeing one other, and I don't know who they had in mind for this character, by the way, ever. I never found that out. Because they had somebody that they were, but I guess hadn't quite hired yet or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I sat down on the floor, and Rick Montgomery walked by me like about 3 times before he realized it was me, because he thought I was a homeless person from Santa Monica. And so I went in, and as that woman, and I knew this is the other little hint. I knew I could go that far because these guys knew me already. If you go that far sometimes and people don't know that you're, right, they don't know you as you, yeah, it can turn people off. I've done that too, where, yeah, people go, okay, thank you very much. If you walk out, and I was going, they didn't get it. I was the character. I wasn't. You still got to be people still have to know you as you a little bit,
right,
and you have to gauge that. If you go in as a character, make sure before you start, you let them know, I did this for the character. I'm now going to disappear into that person, so forgive me. Kind of let them know that you are acting, that you're not a lunatic.
Right.
Because there are a lot of lunatics.
That's great advice,
anyway,
too, yeah.
I did the audition, and I was so exhausted, and mentally and physically, from this whole experience. I remember I walked out, I went into the bathroom, I washed all the egg off my face and took the eyelashes out of my nostrils. And I was done. That was it. I mean, I didn't hear anything. The next day, I was with my son, I remember, and I said, I kind of was trying to educate him about, I said, I finally got to, try this audition, yesterday, and I said, I probably should call Steve Stabler and thank him. And so I did, and he got on the phone, and he said, I'm not supposed to tell you, but he said, we couldn't stop laughing for a half hour after you left. We hired you. And he said, but don't tell anybody yet, because they'll call you later today. And I got the job.
That's awesome.
So, and that really changed my life. I mean, Kingpin, without Kingpin, I wouldn't have gotten There's Something About Mary. But I also had to audition for Something About Mary.
Now,
they were not easy on me. I mean, I had to go in, and I had I had a Magda character as well. I remember spraying the chair with disinfectant, with Lysol spray before I sat down. And stuff like that. I mean, I'm grateful for my wild imagination, which I definitely have in abundance, and that's a gift. That's a gift from above. I can't tell you how to have one. That's something you've got to reach deep down and not be afraid to do the stupidest, silliest thing that you can think of, because it usually is the right thing.
Sorry, Neal was making me laugh. I was just thinking, we were just looking at pictures actually too of the Kingpin character and Magda, and I was thinking when I saw that There's Something About Mary for the first time, because I grew up in South Florida, and
right?
As soon as I saw that woman, I was like, oh my God. I told my mom, I said, that seems like we had a lady.
I know that woman.
We had a woman that lived next door who, like, her husband had passed away, and she lived like another 15 or 20 years, and so we would hang out with her a lot, because she didn't have a lot of family around anymore, but she was exactly like that. I mean, the same, like, been in the sun, been in Florida way too long, just totally baked. Right. And so I thank you for bringing that person to the screen, and it's such a memorable character. I mean, when Neal and I were talking about researching this interview, I was like, man, that's the one right there. I think that's the one that, for me, as far as the characters you played, that's really stands out to me. Just totally funny.
Well, I mean, they were wonderful. They were also wonderful scripts and wonderful. The Farrellys were real masters at. There's no improv in that stuff. I mean, but again, the activity of my love for this dog and this, spraying. One of my favorite moments is when I spray my hair with hairspray and then I spray the dog's hair, and I make it, make it so it's kind of spiky. Like that. Everything that I do was for the dog, and that kissing scene was just the dog. That was hilarious, because the dog must have gone for. It must have been something in the latex. That was 4.5 hours of makeup every day.
Wow.
Extensive. With stretch and stipple, and then the tan, and then the beauty makeup and the wig, and it was really, I mean, it was it was fun, but it was hard. You know, it's hard to be in a makeup chair that long. But the dog, I think, must have been something in the latex or the makeup that it found appealing.
Yeah.
Because the dog started licking, and I remember looking at Cameron and the crew. They were crying. They were laughing so hard, and I just thought, "Don't fuck it up." I mean, you know, because if I broke, then we'd never have it again. That was it. And I remember after the take, I mean, people were literally on the floor. I mean, they were, because it was just so ridiculous. This dog was like, you know, devouring my face, you know, with his tongue, and it was just a great moment. That, you know, that's another lesson is when something is happening, don't comment on it. Just go with it. You know, you gotta, because magic does happen, and but it becomes less magical when you try to manipulate it. So
that's interesting. You were saying about as an actor, you were saying that the Farrelly Brothers in particular don't do any improv, but it seems so funny that like movies, they seem so. I mean, obviously the characters are so worked out, like they definitely are. You're in that skin, but it's funny that you say that because it would seem that they do just how loose things are, or at least they appear in the film, you know, or the kind of the magic moments. And I just want to remark on that. Sorry, I thought that was interesting that you said.
Yeah, I mean they were very talented writers, and especially in Something About Mary. I mean, that dialogue was, you know, I mean, there was no. If you wanted to ask about something, there were a couple moments I had that I tried, and you know, I mean, you don't need to cut yourself off either. But I think it's important that you check with your director too. You know, say, is it okay if I try something, and if it doesn't work, and they'll either say yes or no. And if they say no, you don't do it. But you can't just go in and be a wild card. That's not, unless that's what the director wants, and they'll tell you if they do. You know, and it depends how well you know your directors as well. I mean, you know, Pete and Bobby in those early movies they were terrific scripts. I mean, they really were, they were funny. And I mean, I think Something About Mary is one of the funniest movies ever made. I really do.
Us too, yeah.
I mean, I was telling Neal, I would say Dumb and Dumber, Kingpin, There's Something About Mary are, if I ran down comedies, they're definitely in the top 15 probably of all time for me, so.
I think so too. And they play over and over and
always
over
funny.
and over.
Yeah.
This was 98.
Right.
This was 1998. This, you know, I keep thinking, wasn't it just a few years ago?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like almost
20 years.
2008.
Yeah.
It's almost 20 years ago.
I know, it's crazy.
And it still holds up.
I know. And all their films do, honestly. They're just they're just classic funny movies.
The other thing I want to say is too, the whole thing about age, which can be a real fear for especially female, you know, for actresses. And I can honestly say that's another thing I never think about. I mean, I think about that I play people. I don't play age.
Right.
It's like with Magda and Mrs. Dumars, who the hell knows how old they are? I mean, they could be 30, they could be 90.
Right.
I mean, you just don't know. And that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Now, they're going to try to pigeonhole you, which they still do. And I've been very cautious about, because I'm getting old. I'm getting, you know, I mean, good for me.
Right.
You know, thank God I'm still here. I mean, I want to be here until I'm 120. You know, I love this planet, and I love what I do, and and it's crazy that at this, my career and my life are the happiest I've ever been, bar none.
Excellent.
I mean, now, and it's getting better and better. I mean, it's just better and better. I've got this beautiful franchise that I'm a part of. I'm getting offers all the time to work, and you know, do I want to necessarily have to be in, you know, the next big action Sony classic? if they want me, I'm available, but that's not what it doesn't matter for me. And what matters is that I get to play another character, a different idea, and say something creatively that I think is going to inspire people or make them think about something in a new and different way. That's what's important to me, and that has nothing to do with how old you are. Right. And the more you put pressure on yourself about that, the worse it is. And the more people, you get what you give, in my opinion. I mean, you really do. And, you know, your vitality and your interest and your commitment Those are the things that are important. Don't worry about if you're 30 or if you're 20 or if you're 40 or if you're 90. That doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
you
if you
still
have
have
the
a point of
passion
view
for it,
about life
just keep doing it.
and character, and that's what's important for an actor.
Well, and I think your passion, bleeds through the screen. Every character is so memorable that you've done. And, speaking of the franchise Insidious, where you play Elise, which you're just so brilliant at, Mark and I, when we're cutting a commercial, or
Also big fans. Sorry, I just wanted to...
yeah, and when we're cutting a commercial or doing a project, we love researching people that we admire. And for myself as a director, I love hearing other people talk about working with the director or learning from interviews and just seeing like what their process is and what I can pull or learn from. And James Wan is just one of my favorite directors at the moment. I just think he's so brilliant. I'm just curious, what's your experience like working with him, and what kind of director is he? What's his process with you? And I just find him so fascinating. I think all the things that he does are just so memorable, and I think he's so talented. So I was curious to see, what your experience was like with him.
I totally agree with everything you just said. I met James through a friend, through another director I worked with named Tim Sullivan, who directed the 2001 Maniacs movies.
Oh, right.
Detroit Rock City he produced. And
I love
Tim
Detroit
is
Rock City. Sorry.
Yeah, that's another great one too.
Yeah.
Adam Rifkin, who's got a new movie called Dog Years, with Burt Reynolds that's going to be coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was at Nashville, right? The
listed,
festival.
Yeah, and I mean it's Burt Reynolds' real swan song. It's a real I don't know too much about the story, but Adam, I'm digressing, but Adam, who directed Detroit Rock City, that Tim Sullivan produced, and it was Tim who brought James over to my house one evening, because James was a fan of a movie I did called Dead End with Ray Wise, and that's a real cult classic favorite. That's a great little film if you haven't seen it. James wanted to meet me, and he was, this was after Saw. They have a whole story of their own. He and Leigh Whannell coming from Australia and trying to shop Saw, and how that all worked out. So he had been here for quite a while, and he had done a movie called Dead Silence and another movie, and ironically I found out it was between me and another actress for a lead in one of these other films. I think it was Dead Silence. And it's a good thing I didn't get it, because I never would have done Insidious probably. Right. But at any rate, so James came over, and he was just a sweet, really sweet guy, and told me he was a real fan from Dead End, and I had a copy of the DVD here, and I gave him that, and I didn't. And that was it. He left, and a few weeks later, he called and asked if I would do a little video he was doing with Leigh Whannell called Doggy Heaven, which is still on YouTube. It's worth seeing. It's about a 9-minute story of Leigh Whannell ends up getting killed, and by mistake they send him to dog heaven instead of people heaven. And I played this character with a little dog named Miss Marple. I'm one of my, with big glasses, big boobs, big ass, big sun hat, big glasses, and I have this little fuzzy white dog, Miss Marple, who ends up having bad things happen to it at the end of the 9 minutes. That's all I can tell you. But it was a very cute short that we shot. We shot it, I think, in either a day or 2 days, and that's how I met Mike Mendez, who also has become a wonderful friend and director. He produced that. So that was how I met James, and it was really nice. James was very supportive. He loved the ideas, the costume ideas that a wardrobe designer named Oakley Stevenson, who's also very gifted, and she came up with all these great ideas for the clothes, and it was really we put as much into it as if it was a feature, basically. So James was just very low key. I was working with Leigh Whannell, who was acting in it. He was my scene partner, so to speak. And that was the first time I met Leigh also. And so that was kind of the end of it. And then I guess it was probably not long after that James called and asked, he said, there's this movie we're trying to get made. Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne are my first two choices for the leads, and there's a character named Elise, and would you like to look at the script? And I said, of course. So he sends it over, and I read it in bed. And Leigh is a fantastic writer, but not just dialogue-wise, Lee's narrative is really like reading a novel. I mean, this movie was so scary when I read it, and I was reading it in bed, that I literally took it downstairs and put it in a closet. I just didn't want to, I swear to God, I didn't want to have that next to my head while I was sleeping. And
That's crazy.
And I called James, and I said, I read, I saw the role of Elise, and I just remember there was a lot of talking and a lot of exposition, but it looked like a really interesting character, and I thought the script was great. And I called him back, and he said, I got Patrick and Rose, both of them are on, and I said I would love to do it if you get it made, and everything. And so that was how I got the job. And it was a 3-week shoot, $800,000.
Wow.
And we had no idea, you're just doing a movie. You have no idea what's going to happen with it or whatever. And James was, to really answer your question, was a very low-key director. He's a real cinephile.
Yeah.
So he's not an actor. He doesn't want to be an actor.
Right.
He's a filmmaker. Right. And his composition and sense of storytelling is impeccable. But he doesn't get in there like some directors do, and whether you like it or not, with intention and what are you doing in the scene, or he kind of leaves that 100% up to you. I think he gave me one note during the entire shoot.
Wow.
And it was because I had a question about, there was something, I wanted to have this thing with some frozen peas on my head, because I was going to put a steak, I forget what it was, and he thought it was too funny, because he said, don't forget what scene we're coming out of and what scene we're going to. That's the kind of director he is.
Right.
He knows what he wants in each scene, because it leads to the next step of storytelling. And he leaves the detective work and the emotionality or the whatever, never said a peep about it, because he didn't need to. If you hire good actors, you don't need to do that. It's not an acting class. It's a different story. You're telling a story. If something rings wrong, in terms of what the actor's doing, it, because the director, like someone like James, will go, I need you to be more, less involved here, or I need you to be, he knows the story he's telling, so those are his notes. It's not about helping you find your emotion. He doesn't work like that.
Right.
And nor do you really want a director, unless that's what, that's not true. You always want a director who's aware of that, but he's a cinephile. His thing is about the vision. Yeah. And it's your job to be...
He's casting, and he knows that what you can bring to the table. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Patrick is fantastic, and so is Rose. They were both... And Patrick is like a detective. He would come over to James and say, this word means blah, 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 or we didn't have that. And, James used to lovingly say, Patrick drives me crazy because he's so detail-oriented. Well, that's why Patrick is the actor he is, because he's so detail-oriented, right. And he's totally great, and he's not afraid to ask about something if it doesn't ring right with what he's creating.
Right.
And he's a fantastic person in the scene. He's 1,000% there for you. I loved working with him and Rose. They were just great. And
do you?
I'm proud of that movie.
I was just thinking, like, Insidious was obviously hugely successful given the budget, and then how the fans and how people took to it, and obviously there's a whole franchise now created. When you're making a film, you've made a lot of films and you played a lot of characters. Do you ever get the sense that this is something more, like when are doing it, or you're with the filmmakers themselves? Do you think, like, do you ever get the sense when you're doing it that you're like, oh, this could be that special thing people really take on, or really, like, it becomes a big thing? Yeah, connect to. Exactly. Thanks, Neal. Do you ever get that sense, or is it you're just in there doing the work?
No, yeah. I think you just do the work, and if a take has been great. But listen, also the thing about film as opposed to theater is the performance is finally made in the editing room. You can have the most brilliant take on the planet, and when somebody like James goes to put it together, sometimes one of two things can happen. You can change their perspective on maybe the journey that your character's taking or the story is taking by what you give,
Right.
or they can go, this is the wrong place to have blah blah blah. We need to cut that out, and it could have been the best take ever that you ever had in your whole career, and it doesn't matter because it can end up on the editing, on the floor. But I think you just want to always do your best. I mean, the new Insidious, which will be released now January 5th of next year, they're holding it because they were supposed to release it October, but there's so many films coming out in October. I guess Darren Aronofsky has a new film coming out with Jennifer Lawrence. I mean, all these other horror films are coming out all in October, and they don't want to they want Insidious to stand alone. So,
right.
I guess so they're holding until January. But I forgot what I was saying. But I forgot I lost my train of thought.
Okay.
What did you ask me?
No, that's okay. Yeah, I think. I think that's well covered. I assumed that's given your nature of how you work. There's your focus on the work, and there's no real indication when you're doing it. Whether it's going to be a.
I know what I was going to say. I was going to say we did some fantastic. There were some takes that we did in this next Insidious that. I mean, when you get applause from the crew, it's exciting because they hate everything.
Oh, yeah, right. They're always grumpy, yeah.
I mean, they're grumpy because they've been there. You're there 16 hours. They're there 22 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing. People underestimate what it takes from the crew. Oh, my God. I mean, I don't know how or why they do what they do because it's the most grueling. The actors get to go sit down for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
When you're a DP or you're a gaffer, you don't sit down at all, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, through the entire shoot. So anyway, long story short, when you get appreciation from them for a scene, it's just exciting because you've really put something forward special. However, it can still end up on the editor's floor. So you just always do your best, like you said it. I mean, that was the point of that conversation.
No, and I think that's really great because the funny thing about Mark and I is we have a great relationship as a director and editor, and there's some days where I'll bring him a ton of footage and I'll say, it didn't go well. I didn't get what I needed and we don't have anything. And then, a day later, Mark's like Rumpelstiltskin like weaves gold. And then he goes, oh no, everything's here. It's fine. And then for some reason it's, exactly what I wanted, but I didn't think I had it. And I think having someone like that, or even with James, where he has his own vision and he collaborates with the editor, that relationship is so important because like you said, the movie is going to be made in the editing room, whether you did your best take and maybe that one's on the cutting room floor, or maybe the first take that you didn't think was that great is the one that people remember.
Using, and I'll say that's happened to me on several occasions. To see the way something is finally put together. So the very bottom line is you always do your best. You give your best, and sometimes it's not as good as you think it should be, but sometimes that's perfect. And sometimes you think it's the greatest thing you ever saw, and they go, it's a little too over the top, or it's a little, there wasn't enough going on here or there. So you're there to provide the paint set, basically. And, it's as an actor, because it's such a personal and emotional expression of yourself as well as the character, it sometimes hurts your feelings to feel like, that you've put it all out there. I mean, there's a great Lee Strasberg story about that. I think it's Shelley Winters used to tell, where she was doing something and she had this phenomenal breakthrough and emotionally, and she was just carrying on. And then when it was all over, Lee went and he said, "That was terrible." he said, "What were you doing? Do it again." And so what you feel is not always what is required. It's nice to feel good and to feel like you did good. And to feel, for actors in particular, we love it when it's a big emotional breakthrough, and but sometimes that's a lot of garbage when you see it. And sometimes you'll see it yourself and see another actor do it on screen, and you go, "Ugh, just be quiet already." It's all perspective, and it's all part of the storytelling, and you are only a part of it, and you always give your most and best, and that's all you have to do anyway.
No, of course, and I appreciate too the stories on James. I think that helps me sort of reaffirm my position because I feel like I'm cut from the same cloth as far as actors. I did act in high school, and I still kind of do every once in a while. But I think I read a Clint Eastwood quote one time where he said when he directs, he casts the actors that he wants, and then he basically just lets them do, whatever they want, unless he has to tweak one little thing, because the actors are the ones, just like you, who create the character, have the backstory, are working on it, and are putting, their heart and soul into this character. And as long as it's in line with what you're doing and the vision, you got to kind of let them run with it, because that's their specialty. So,
right.
But yeah, I guess one last question before we let you go. One thing we've been asking a few people so far is, Mark and I, we basically just talk about movies and what we love about them. Are there any certain movies that you just love watching? What if it comes on TV, you finish it, or they have a special place in your heart? Are there any films like that?
I always go to The Shining for some reason. I just that
Great.
I think that's such a fantastic film and so engaging.
The Kubrick version, right? Correct.
Oh,
Okay.
totally.
That's what I'm sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, to go back to Jack, I mean, that's one of his all-time greatest roles ever, and it's just and Shelley Duvall. I mean, there's apparently some really literal horror stories about the making of that film.
Yeah.
Talk about directors putting their actors.
Yeah.
You don't need to shoot off a gun to make me scared, but there are directors who did that and who do that. I mean, that's
It's
a real
certainly
thing.
translated.
Or who manipulate you to make you miserable and cry. And I mean, there's famous stories about Shelley Duvall on that film that are pretty harrowing. But the film itself is just, I think, a brilliant piece of entertainment as well as storytelling. Let me just think what else. I can't right off the top of my head.
To that note, though, you've done, obviously you've done a lot of different genres. You've explored different genres. Do you find you have to take your role differently if you're doing a comedy, or say you're doing the Insidious? Is it? Are you in a different mindset, or are you just like totally 100% character? I gotta do the character, and then everything will work itself out. In terms
more
of
of that,
yeah.
I don't change what I do for the. I mean, I'm really my point of view of life is pretty funny, actually. So I have gratefully have some ability to kind of that alpha state, where things, I just get ideas about stuff, and but I don't think about it like that so much. I really do think about just the story we're telling, and there's different tempos. If you're doing again with television in particular, if you're doing a sitcom, which I'm not a joke teller. I don't like jokes particularly. They don't.
Right.
I mean, there's great sitcoms. I mean, you look at all the Frasier and all these great older ones, especially. They're fantastic. The writing is fantastic. The timing is something you can't really teach somebody.
Right.
And I'm grateful. I don't know where it comes from, but I just get it. I mean, I just have a feel for that, I think. But I don't really think about it any differently. I whatever instinctually, hopefully I come up with, it's the right flavor. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of aspects to the flavor too. It's not just the way you deliver lines or the thoughts you have. It surrounds the whole piece as a whole. So that also inspires the way you behave in a scene, I would say.
Oh, great.
Well, we really appreciate taking your time out today and talking to us. It's been so fun just learning about your process and where you came from, and just how wonderful you're doing now, and all the great films. And I'm so appreciative too of Chuck for introducing us, and after your great performance in Hillside Strangler. So
that's still to date one of my favorite things I ever did. I mean, I still have it on one of my reels. I mean, that was a really exciting thing, and I hope Chuck goes forward too and does some really fantastic things. I know he's trying to develop some stuff, I think, for television. Now again with Netflix and HBO and all these different producing legs and arms, there's room for more really important content, I think, and real artistic content. It's not so you're not so limited by commercials, by companies telling you what you should put on your show, basically.
Well, I think he'd be great in TV too, because the writers are in charge there, and he's such a good writer, and I think he'd really fit in well.
I do too. I love Chuck. I think he's extraordinarily gifted as well. And it's really nice to thank you so much for inviting me because as you can see, I sort of get into it, and I've got so many stories. And
we love it. Yeah.
I can't believe how old I got, to be honest. It all feels like smoke and mirrors. It really does. I mean, it's somewhat magical. And I mean that both plus and minus.
Right.
Like, how did I get here? Why do my eyes look like that? But oh well, I hope in final closing, I always hope that people don't go, oh, it's her again, but always go, oh, it's her again.
No, that's definitely my reaction.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope I work till the day I drop dead. I really do.
I think we all do. Yeah.
Well, I hope so. And listen, thank you guys. You're just getting going.
Yeah.
So keep up all the good work you're doing, and enjoy the joy and there is to be found in what we do. It's really special. Really special. Don't let anybody ever take that out of you.
Yeah, we're lucky to do this. We're lucky to be creative and have a creative outlet and be passionate about what we do. And you definitely shared all that with us too, and we totally agree.
All right. Well, it's really a pleasure to talk to you guys. Thank you so much.
The pleasure's all ours. Thank you so much, Lynn.
Continued luck. Okay, talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was awesome. Lynn is so inspirational.
Super cool lady, yeah.
Great advice for young actors, for filmmakers, or anyone, really, I guess, in any field or aspiration that you have, where she said the part about, whether you're 20, 30, 60, you can still do what you want.
Yeah.
I just want to say a special thanks to my friend Chuck Perello. He's a great writer. If you have a chance, look him up. He did a bunch of different movies, but he worked with Lynn on a film he wrote and directed called The Hillside Strangler that had C. Thomas Howell and Nick Turturro, and it's a really great performance by Lynn. And he's just a great guy. And shout out to Chuck. Hope you're doing well. And thanks for a long time ago introducing me to Lynn. Lynn's a great friend and a great person, and couldn't have been happier with the interview we had today. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, it was great. Lynn's super cool, and she did not disappoint. Her passion is very evident in what she does, and she's got a lot of, like I said, wisdom to bestow on everyone just because she's been doing it for a long time, and she's done it through a lot of eras, and she's worked in every genre. And she's really made some memorable characters, and it was cool to, just to hear her talk about, working with James Wan, working with the Farrellys, her start, her, talking about her brother. Yeah, it was great. Really good listen.
Yeah, I'm glad she talked about James Wan. He's one of my favorite directors. I think Jason Blum, who produced Insidious, is probably the best producer working in Hollywood right now, and there's a lot to learn from him. But I guess what we'll end this episode on, we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you enjoyed the interview and the more interviews we have to come. But if you are an actor and you need to do a character that looks a little decrepit, little gross, just pull out that egg white.
Yeah, just show up at the casting call with egg white and fake eyelashes hanging out your nose and
a clown
and look
shirt,
homeless.
Look homeless. and
persistence pays off. I think just on a serious note, persistence pays off, and she definitely exemplifies that. So
hashtag cool, persistence pays off.
What a cool lady. And if there's anyone that you think we should talk to, we should interview, please hit us up on Twitter, Instagram. Just use hashtag BOTB or hashtag best of the best if you want. And we would love to hear feedback from everyone to see if there's anyone we should talk to, because we enjoy it as much as we do the other episodes. So please hit us up.
Yeah, and if you are friends of ours that are filmmakers and there's someone you think we should talk to or that you've worked with, then also reach out too, because we're all a community and we all love being creative and making things. So let's just do it together. So persistence pays off. Egg white, eyelashes in the nostril, and just being good at your job.
Make out with a dog.
And make out with a dog.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening. We ask that you rate, review, and subscribe to Best of the Best on iTunes or your preferred podcast app. Have ideas for show topics, opinions, or just want to say hello? Send us an email to bestofthebestpod@gmail.com. Till next time, special thanks to Radar Studios and long live Don Hogue.